Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
What's up, Delora? New week, new recap.
Yes, I'm excited.
Time to dive into some Black excellence, as we talked about on the tail end of our episode last week. We are getting into some history, some Blackness, and some television all in one, with a recap today of a two-part docuseries, Seen and Heard: The History of Black Television, currently available on HBO Max. It dropped in September of this year. Here's a quick summary, showcasing how Black artists and creators both shaped and revolutionized the medium while confronting the systemic challenges that have often undermined their contributions. As I mentioned, Issa Rae and Hooray Media serve as executive producer. Rotten Tomatoes, I could not find a audience score, but it's 100% critic score. So Delora, what is your grade for Seen and Heard: The History of Black Television?
It's an easy A. So proud of Issa. Issa is such an inspiration with what she does and how diversified it is, right? Like, we not only get shows like Insecure, rap shit, we get a reality TV show, and now we get this documentary. And then shout out to her other endeavors like restaurants and wine.
Yeah.
So super proud of her. It's very interesting that this project, along with number one on the call sheet, both came out this year. But I love it because, to me, I feel like when we watched and recap number one on the call sheet, I feel like we were in a different space than we are today. And I feel like being able to see Issa's project in today's climate was just very fortifying, in that things that happen in life is very cyclical, right? There's nothing new under the sun. You hear these things, but to see it in action and to see the history of how our people have been, viewed in the public eye, and again, the cyclical nature of things, it just was reassuring that it's like, we're going to see the other side of this.
Yeah. And hopefully planting roots, as Tracy Ellis Ross speaks about.
So weathering the storm right now.
Mm-hmm. It's an A for me too with this one. I mean, I haven't really been giving grades to documentaries that we've been doing, but it's because those have been very much about real life, very traumatic situations that have happened, and this being more so about television history, and especially history that, I particularly love and wanted to hear more about. It's an easy A for me as well. And the folks that are represented throughout this docuseries are some of my favorite Black creatives.
Period.
And for that, I am very excited to dive in. So, spoiler alert, as we get into this docuseries, my first question is, what are your top 5 favorite Black shows?
We'll probably have to do like pre-questions sometimes, because for this one, I'm just like, okay, top Black shows, like ever, amen. Okay. Now, Black shows as in made by Black people, or Black shows as in Black people in the shows as well? Because
I think both count for the sake of this conversation.
Okay. Well, Shonda Rhimes is gonna have a big hold. Top five, and I'm not doing it in order because then that requires me to do a lot of thinking. But Bridgerton. The way that she was able to just create this world that Black people have been excluded from. But the romantic in me who grew up watching Ever After and Pride and Prejudice and all that, I'm like, a Black girlie can be in Regency London too and be Queen Charlotte. Like, that show brings me joy. Scandal. What a time to be alive. Shout out to all my young co-workers, those Gen Zers who are currently understanding the magic of Scandal. But to live in it and the inception of Twitter at the same time. Woo, when you found out who her daddy was, oh, you had to be there.
Papa Pope.
And then her mama, oh, okay. Let's go back to the 90s, shall we? Favorite shows. I don't know where to go, Ashley, because watching this documentary, I was like, did everybody have the same Black experience? I mean, like Martin, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know who they didn't have? Family Matters. Family Matters wasn't on there.
They talked about it, was shown briefly, yes, but they did not have a solid representative for Family Matters. Correct.
Yeah. Living Single, like, I don't know. I'm listing them off at this rate, Ashley. And then I also want to highlight Abbott Elementary for, today's things that are still running, because that's the thing, and I'm sure we'll get to that conversation as well. The shows I have come to love, they have either ended or were canceled. Like, what's left?
Yeah, it's been getting bleak out here. Well, I'll run through my top 5, which are kind of in order, but the things can shift. Number 1, A Different World.
Oh, of course. Duh.
Number 2.
Yeah. You prepared though.
I mean, I would be able to rattle these off though, because I've talked about this list before. Like, I have my top 5 Black and my top 5 white shows.
Really? I don't have mine. I'll work on it then.
So number 2 is Living Single. Number 3 is Martin. Number 4 is Blackish. Number 5 is Fresh Prince. I think the 90s absolutely still have a chokehold on me in terms of the like optimal era that has my heart, and those casts and that legacy that's left from those for me. And of the modern era, like, Blackish is definitely top. And the reason why it's top of the modern era is because I will rewatch Blackish any day of the week. Like, even if it's like a family occasion, it's like, yo, we got family of different ages, we got men and women. What can I throw on that everybody can enjoy? Is Blackish. And I mean that flat out. Last Family Barbecue, what show did I throw on? Blackish. You know what I mean? Nice. So it's not only great, but it holds up, and I think it will hold up over time. So great inclusions you included for some of the more modern stuff, but my list is staying my list for the foreseeable future. All right.
I also have to create my list because, like, again, like I said, watching the documentary, I'm like, she literally hit on all the shows that I grew up and loved.
Yep. So we start the first episode with the end of Blackish's 8-season run, 176 episodes. We have Anthony Anderson and Tracy Ellis Ross appearing on Kimmel. Why do you think we started here in the docuseries? It was something I thought about quite a bit. I was like, why did they start here?
I think they started there for, I'll start with 2 reasons. The first is that Blackish was able to be a hit and be successful for over 100 episodes and then was able to properly end.
Yep.
I think that's why they were highlighted. The most recent family comedy showing Black people in a way that was not degrading. It was overall positive imagery. I mean, there are critiques on Kenya Barris' love for light brights, but
The biracials.
the biracials. But for the most part, the show did more good than not. And the fact that they were able to celebrate the ending of a show, I think that's why they were highlighted. Because where's our next Black family show that's a hit?
Yeah. And also
That's a comedy too, because
you have Black television royalty in Tracee Ellis Ross, right? She was able to have two successful Black shows and Girlfriends and Blackish, and starting with her brought me joy. You know, if there
she's our girl,
a legacy that Tracee Ellis Ross will leave, it is joy.
Yes.
And it made me happy that, to her point, she was able to be on a show where there was a nice wrap up and conclusion, because they did not get that with Girlfriends.
A celebration to the end too. You know what I mean?
Like, but also like you can prepare. You can prepare the audience. You can prepare yourself and the cast and have that. I mean, because a lot of shows live and die by their ending. That is how they are memorialized in terms of audience recall, holding up over time. Like, we were big Game of Thrones fans. The way Game of Thrones ended means it will never become one of those shows to me that I will speak about and recommend to people for the foreseeable future. I stopped talking about Game of Thrones as soon as it was over.
Yeah. So I actually had a conversation with someone today. I was like, huge fan of Game of Thrones. Throw away the last few seasons. For sure, the last one. And like the way everyone was nodding their heads, I'm like, you understand exactly what I'm saying.
It matters. I mean, it matters for movies, but it matters even more for shows, because you're living with these characters it's for a longer period of time and more in depth. So I love that for her. She also made the quote that I said when we first started of, hopefully we're creating roots in a way that we can't be washed away. Speaking about the cyclical nature, and to your point, as Blackish was ending and a lot of other Black shows were ending, you got the sense of, where's the next generation? Where's the next wave? How are we going to sustain Black content? There was still hope, obviously, from the Issa Raes of the world, from the Shondas of the world, from the Quintas of the world, and them being able to get their foothold as creatives in the industry. But there's only so many of them right now still. It's not like we're so prevalent that we can take over every major network out here. I mean, we need to build our own.
Girl, we live in a time this year with, you know, the sweeping rollbacks of anything remotely close to DE&I, and a lot of shows that were on the cusp or in development scrapped to appease our current administration. And I think what's so infuriating about that is, you know, the administration and people who have no problem following it, you know, they'll say, oh, this is a mandate from the people. No, it was not. Y'all did not win the majority.
No.
So that's where it gets, I think that's where the pain really does come in, because they're like just wiping it away so quickly. Almost, I don't want to say joyfully, but it's like, well, on to the next. Let's scrap this Tiana show. Let's scrap freaking Equalizer, which was a hit show for freaking CBS. But they brought in the new show with the white guy from This Is Us or whatever, replace Queen time slot, and they were like, you know what, canceled.
Yeah,
you know how I feel about Queen. We love Queen on this side.
Yep. Absolutely. I felt conflicted in the doc when Tyler Perry graced the screen. Like, I get why he's included, obviously, and he does add a lot of value to this when he speaks about
He had
the
a lot of
Chitlin
screen
circuit
time, friend.
and,
Like,
yeah, and the honoring of Black artists at the studio and all these things. But I think just with the recent discussion around him possibly abusing his staff with, you know, his power, possibly
yeah.
sexually, I don't even know what the word is, assaulting,
Mm-hmm.
intimidating his staff, a particular actor who has come out against him. I don't know. It's weird always with a lot of these Hollywood cases to try to speak about them in such a way when we don't know all the details, but it is disturbing also to revere and put people on pedestals when we know that there's a lot of shady-ish that does go on and can be going on. So I don't know. I mean, I got why he was included, but I was like,
I wasn't surprised to see him, but I was just surprised to see how much screen time he got. Like, he got screen time on both parts. That you know, and I think he obviously deserves to be part of this conversation. But yes, his I don't even know what's going on with that case, by the way. I don't think we got any update. I think the issue that I have with Tyler Perry, and don't get me wrong, I think it'd be fantastic to tour his studios and to see the different sound stages named after our greats. Like, that'll probably be up there with like the Smithsonian, like, to know that he was able to build something and still be able to, honor our now ancestors um with that honor, because who knows if they would ever do that in Hollywood. But my biggest issue with Tyler Perry personally is, how is he cultivating the next generation? Like, his actions right now is giving major boomer. Like, Anna Wintour, I am holding on to Vogue with with the skin of my nail. Like, especially when it comes around writing, 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 writing. You know what I mean? He claims that he's worked with other writers and everything like that. But, sir, you are cranking out how many shows and movies by yourself?
And is it really by himself, or is it that other people just don't get the credit for some of the things and the work that they do? And
Like some ghostwriter stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's a fair critique, because we see the opposite with some of the people like Issa, who we see cultivate the talent that's around her. She gave Sarita her shot as a showrunner with Rap Shit, and yeah, I mean, and it's a power difference, it's a personality difference, obviously. But even as we move forward in the documentary, you'll hear people say, "Oh, well, Mara Brock-Akil was an assistant or intern for Debbie Allen," and then you have Lena, who is the intern for Mara, and so that cyclical nature too of talent being able to be brought up under that generation prior to them matters. And so
even Larry Wilmore and his work with Issa,
yeah,
like,
he was
that
a mentor to
mentorship.
Issa. Yeah, and it was HBO who actually brought them together, which I never knew that for their relationship. But yeah, I mean, I think it is important, and maybe we just don't hear it talked about a lot with Tyler. It may be happening, but you know, the biggest thing that a lot of actors and people in Hollywood love about him is that he does pay them really well.
Yes. Yes.
For what the work he does with them. So I know that's a positive that comes out of the discussion about him.
Yes.
But yeah, again, I was just like, okay, I get why he's a part of the conversation. Absolutely. But okay. So we got to move on to Oprah, because of course Oprah is in this.
Quick,
yeah.
Really quick. They didn't talk about this in the documentary, but Issa actually had a contract with Shonda Rhimes, and that fell through.
Yeah,
and
she's talked about it previously.
I'm surprised they didn't bring it up in the documentary, but I'm glad that they obviously are in a good space, because, you know, Shonda was was featured in it.
Uh-huh. So talking about Oprah, and obviously she's the queen mother of
Yep.
a lot of these other folks who are highlighted in this series. She said, when you grow up not seeing images of yourself anywhere, it's hard to feel seen. And she was speaking about her upbringing in rural Mississippi and the fact that she never saw Black people that looked like her on television, and how that kind of shaped her childhood and her thoughts around, you know, her self-image and her self-worth. And I think that's valuable because, you know, not just Black people, but minorities in
Yes.
America have often felt that, right? You still have underrepresentation of Asians in TV
Yes.
and film, underrepresentation of Hispanic people in television
Yes.
and film. So when people do get those opportunities, it's so, like, I just saw one of the actors from Shang-Chi, or not Shang-Chi. What's the show that was on Hulu that you watched and really liked? Not
On
Shang-Chi,
Hulu.
because that was Marvel. It was a series. It was like epic. They won a whole bunch of awards for it. It was like, I think, supposed to be set in China of a certain period.
Oh yeah, Shogun.
Shogun.
Mm-hmm.
One of the actors from Shogun was being interviewed by Tom Hiddleston, taking it back to the headlines and hot topics. And he asked her, like, what does this mean for you with, like, within the Japanese and Asian communities? And she
Mm-hmm.
started tearing up and had to, like, pause in the interview because she was like, I literally just had a conversation with some young women, young Asian women, talking about what it means to see me and this character on television. And so
Right.
as Black people, you know, and having been in this position for a long time as well, you know, Oprah and some of the folks who are much older than us, and, you know, Debbie Allen speaks about it to an extent with, you know, I grew up in Jim Crow era still.
Right.
And just thinking about what it meant to start being able to see the shift and start to see representation, only to realize, like, we don't own none of this shit though.
We don't. We're at the whims
It's
of
white
these
people
men.
behind
Yeah.
the scenes
Yeah.
and making these things, right? So
I thought it was very touching to for Oprah to talk about the closest thing she thought was this white young girl. I didn't
with
catch
a
her
round
name,
nose.
with a round nose and dark hair. And I thought that was really interesting because I think, you know, when you hear these studios tell people all the time, Black people don't sell, Black people don't sell, especially internationally, they can't relate, they can't relate. But I'm like, Black people have the ability to see themselves in literally anyone and any body. Why can't we? Why is that not? I don't know, because to me, it's always been easy. I've always, you know, we talk about how much media means to us, especially as we grow up. But I remember loving the sweetness of a Drew Barrymore and the charm of a Julia Roberts, or you know, who else did I like growing up? I can't think of everybody. But just even Melissa Joan Hart, the sarcasticness of her, like I felt like there were elements of people that you could connect to. And these women look nothing like me. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah,
like, why is this such a far-fetched idea for people to find that relatability to somebody who is Black, who is brown, who is,
exactly.
you know, thick, small, short, tall, what have you? I find it to be so limiting. They have such limiting beliefs when it comes to people's capabilities,
Yeah.
because it's like we still have stars. People love Oprah,
Yeah. And it's just not true. That's what it comes
and
down to. It's just not
period.
true.
Period.
Um, so Stan Lathan, Sanai's daddy for our generation.
Yes.
Uh
Exactly.
he
Who's kind of a big
starts
deal.
a little
But
bit.
I feel bad. I didn't know who he was until, so now I was like, oh, that's my dad. And I was like, who's that man? And then I looked him up and I was like, oh.
Yeah, she's the legacy, darling. She's the legacy. But he starts the discussion in the doc about, again, Amos and Andy and these white creators who've created these super stereotypical Black characters. For Amos and Andy in particular, super negative super negative stereotypes. It started out as a radio show. It was white men who were the talent. Then when they decided to bring it to television, can't do that. So they put black people on, and the NAACP was so outraged they eventually were able to get it canceled. But obviously the damage was done, right? And so I love when Debbie Allen comes on and she starts talking about Shirley Temple, and she was like, "I wanted to replace that little heifer." I was like,
I thought of two things. So the first with Amos and Andy, one, I had never heard of them in my entire life. And I'm glad I didn't. But two, it reminded me of our more recent recap, our TBT of Breaking Down the House, because, you know, what they were saying about Amos and Andy is like, we don't talk like that.
exactly.
Like what is this, right? And we said that with Breaking Down the House is like, you got me straight tripping, boo. No one says that. Like, no. Like, where did this come from? Oh, it came from the mind of these two white men that thought it was funny. Now, like I said, people are complex, and I still find that movie to be hilarious, but
because of the time. Because it was a different time. You're talking about a time with Amos and Andy where that's the only representation that is being allowed to be put out there. Whereas the joke and the humor was supposed to be Bringing Down the House. Oh, we're so removed from that. We're so removed from that.
And then you realize in 2025, we are not.
We are not at all. Like, and that's still a lot of people's perception. You said
were a long time ago was actually not that far ago.
Yeah.
How did we all fall for that?
Yeah, but it just shows our perception too in this documentary, in this docuseries, like with black talent versus white talent. Because again, Debbie Allen, she doesn't have a black person that she's looking at to say, oh, that's somebody to, I want to replace. She's looking at Shirley Temple, which you would never equate like Debbie Allen thinking like, oh, I'm going to outdance Shirley Temple. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because of the lack of representation.
But with that, I'm also reminded of Taylor Swift and how I do feel like she represents mediocrity in a way that like again, we talk about her songwriting, sure, yes, but like everything else, I can live performance, actual performance, dancing. You can list like 10 up and comers that got more talent than her, but she's uplifted because I'm just going to say it with my chest. She is a cute white girl that's blonde and like blue eye. Like, I think they love that. Like, and she has made that her entire personality, you know what I mean? And has, made it all the way to the bank. And so I say that looking at, and I say that to say Debbie Allen, I know so many people are like looking at Taylor Swift like, I know I can be better than her. Like, watch me.
Well, not even can I be, I am. Not can I be. I am.
And then when they did Shirley Temple's little dance, and then you see Debbie Allen probably in her fame days, the way Debbie would move her body. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Right. Yep. We move on to Nichelle Nichols, legendary as Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek. This story about Martin Luther King Jr. and him being her biggest fan and having a conversation to tell her how important her portrayal on the show was, how it's the only show that he and Coretta will let the kids watch. And this was at a pivotal time where she was considering leaving the show to go do like Broadway. I would have kept that story close to my heart till the day I died and said, I have lived out my purpose because Martin Luther King Jr. told me how pivotal my portrayal of this character was in the lexicon of blackness in this country.
Yeah.
I could die.
That story so
happy.
Much. Love that story so much.
My goodness. One for the books.
Absolutely.
Red Fox.
I love these stories because it shows you like he really, during the civil rights era, he was everywhere.
Oh, yeah. He absolutely was.
The actors and actresses and singers and like,
It was
Obviously
a
being
time where
present.
Black talent was utilized for the fight, for the struggle,
Yeah.
and in a way that a lot of talent today is not.
Nope. They would rather cash a check than speak up about something that matters.
Yep. All right, we're going to push through a little bit more to this next iteration of Red Fox, Sanford and Son, Good Times, Jeffersons, all Norman Lear shows. That's a white man yet again who, Norman Lear, I have known the name Norman Lear for a little while now, but when I was younger and I watched these shows, I had no idea. I had no idea that Sanford and Son and Good Times and the Jeffersons were written by white people, right? That
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
white controlled, because when you see Black people on screen, at least I was imagining that Black people were behind the screen as well. And that just was not the case. So to hear Norman Lear kind of talk about how he would let people say their 2 cents, but if he felt it was fine and he keeps feeling like it's fine, then it is what it is. Oh, I felt like my blood boil on that a bit, because I'm like, how are you going to tell the Black cast and Black cast members at certain times? I know they were ready to quit the show.
So for me, I will say this. I was aware of Norman Lear, but I assumed he was more of an ally at one point. But then, with everything that came to be when with the documentary and showing what he's said to the actors, I do feel like with the success and money, I think he didn't want to rock anybody's boats. You know what I mean? And
some people
I
may still
think,
see him as an ally to an extent because he gave people opportunity, but it
right,
doesn't mean it was
because somebody was thinking about
healthy.
doing it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it was always healthy.
That's true. That's true, because he still was willing to have hard conversations that like the nation hadn't seen before, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's kind of like that conversation of, it's always, I think even James Baldwin talks about it. It's like, it's easy for you to say, wait your turn, one step at a time. And it's like, but you're not on fire.
Yeah. Well,
I
he even said
am.
that about writers. He was like, Black writers are trying to get their foot in the door. They're impatient, as they should be, but they can't, they don't have the experience to be able to do it the way we want to do it. Well, how are they going to get the experience then? You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
somebody
It's
has
that
to give them the
vicious cycle.
opportunity to
Exactly.
get their foot in the door. So we start hearing more from our newer generation. Issa, she talks about growing up in Senegal and her mom recording all the Black shows and possibly imitating Claire Huxtable. Rest in peace to Malcolm Jamal Warner, discussing his
Girl,
audition for the Cosby Show
girl.
and the hand that Bill Cosby had in shaping it, which is unfortunately why the Cosby Show cannot be in my top 5, even though it would otherwise be. And that is very
Yeah.
painful for me.
It
Very
feels
painful.
so hypocritical though when you find out, like,
The type of person he actually is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like, oh, he didn't, freaking Lisa Bonet stopped working because he was like, my daughter is not pregnant at college. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
He's a weird dude, because
Yeah.
how can you supposedly have all these morals and values that you live by and yet
Right.
you're a date rapist? I mean, it's absurd.
It's crazy.
But Debbie Allen obviously got a chance to put her stamp on a different world, and that is undeniable.
Can we take a moment for this woman? Like, I want a documentary just on her, because
I'm sure she'll be getting one.
the fact that she was their age directing, she literally steered the entire show in a new direction, and she directed every episode after
season 1.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
she had a
mean.
huge
Like,
hand in
after
changing the
she took over the show.
trajectory of this show and the success. Before Debbie Allen, it did not have the relevancy. To her point, it didn't have the character development. It did not have the stamp of true HBCU experiences.
Correct.
And she brought all of that.
And, I'm just so impressed by her, because again, she was a young woman doing this, standing on her creative vision to execs and to Cosby. And she's also like directed the Oscars. Like she's done all types of stuff. And obviously she's an executive producer of Grey's Anatomy now, post Sandra Rhimes, Shonda Rhimes exit, but still a Black woman is still a part of like the leadership of that show and the writing and directing and things like that. So kudos to her. Love her.
And the fact that A Different World still stands up generationally now is insane. In Living Color, I've said this many times, I was robbed, but Keenen Ivory Wayans, the Wayans family, the story of the show going up against the Super Bowl, and that being how the Super Bowl halftime show got started, obviously was told in this documentary. But it was interesting to me to see that Phil Donahue clip. I didn't realize how controversial they were considered to be. David Alan Grier was pissed on that panel. He looked like he was about ready to cuss somebody out. But obviously, it was an undeniable stamp on the culture, stamp on comedy, and that also was a catalyst to other things like Def Comedy Jam that we saw, which was also kind of at the cusp of the hip-hop culture and movement that was going on. And then we get fully into our 90s era: Fresh Prince, Living Single, Martin, Steve Harvey Show, Family Matters, Sister Sister, Wayans Brothers, on and on and on. And we get into Mara Brock Akil discussing how Black the Moesha set was. I love how she referenced one day Aaliyah would be in here, then another day Usher would be in here, then another day, like, I can only imagine. This to me had to have been, in my mind, the goldenest of golden eras of Black television. And I would have loved to be of age to be working in this generation and this era.
It's so, I like, again, what they did was so special, and it is forever imprinted on our hearts. And like you said, a lot of these shows hold up so well today. Just thinking about Living Single, that was my midnight feeding show. Like I watched the entire series front to back. Loved every moment of it. That was another show that didn't get the ending it deserved. Martin, still hilarious. Like Moesha, it brings me joy. It brought me much joy. Absolutely.
Oprah tells her story about not enjoying being a reporter because it was just, always having to deal with kind of people on their worst day, a lot of bad news. And so they gave her a talk show basically to get rid of her. Sometimes rejection is your biggest blessing, because obviously she became who she is. And she said one of the things that she thinks is going to, should be engraved in her tombstone that a fan has told her is, watching you be yourself every day makes me want to be more myself. And I thought that was beautiful, for one, but also, again, when you look at the people who are really highlighted in this, it's not just that they were able to create amazing things that stand up to time. You can see that they were exactly where they were supposed to be to create the art that they created. And that's like, if nothing else, that is an amazing way to live your life.
I agree.
And Oprah is one of the epitomes of that, right?
Yep.
So I love to hear that story. And one of the things that I ended up feeling a bit guilty about watching this, when we move into kind of this era and the whitewashing of a lot of this Black content over time, is when they do talk about how Black shows were used to help launch a network, like Sister Sister, Wayans Brothers. A lot of these were moved over to the WB, and it was used as a springboard to launch the WB. Then wait, we got our ratings, we got our audience. Now we're about to slowly move y'all out, cancel all y'all, bring in Gossip Girl, bring in Dawson's Creek, bring in Felicity. And I am fully guilty of the slide over to watching those shows too. I felt so bad about that as I'm watching this because I'm like, yeah, they got the budget to market. They got these
Yeah. They
young,
made these
white,
stars.
attractive cast
Yep.
members, and they held on to me as an
Yeah.
audience member as a Black person.
Interesting. They didn't get me because I never watched Johnson or Gossip Girl. I feel like there's shows that I definitely would have watched because you remember I watched the OC. You remember that from back in the day?
Of course.
So, which was on Fox. So that was
Misha Barton.
post, Martin and Living Single. But I'm glad they said something about it because, as I mentioned before, things being very cyclical, that's what Tubi did. Tubi had those outrageous, quote unquote, ghetto movies that people love to make fun of. And they got some momentum and they started replacing the content with white people. And I'm like, what do you think? Apparently not only Black people are watching these shows, so like what are you doing? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I was a child when this happened, so I'm not going to beat myself up too much.
No.
To this day, I love Felicity. I have the DVDs, but
I feel like I need to watch it. I'm aware of Felicity. I remember I was like, okay, speaking of things to relate to, I'm like, white girl with curly hair. Look at that. All those
I mean, Carrie Russell is beloved for me. Like she's one of you talk about white women, like she is up there for me. I love me some Carrie Russell, but she captured me at a time, even when she did like Honey, I Blew Up the Kid and some of
Yes.
her younger roles to graduate to Felicity and then, see her become a woman, do shows like The Americans, all this stuff. Like she has had such a great career, but
Yes.
Felicity is the show that like captured my heart, that cast.
Mhm.
I listened to a podcast fully recapping it.
I love
I
that.
love Felicity. So it's not to say that those shows don't hold value. I just mean I never looked at it through this lens, and looking at it through this lens, I'm like, I just got to be more mindful, right? Because this is how these things happen and it impacts my community. So we get into episode 2, and again, they're talking about the Black waves and if we're finally at a place of having enough ownership to stop the cycle, right? So then we get into the Shonda Rhimes. We get into TGIT. We get into the fact that her parents raised her and her siblings to be very intelligent, very independent. I love that we finally hear her in her own words talk a bit about the decision to leave ABC, where she had so much success, and go over to Netflix. And no, it's not petty. It's
No,
not a petty
it's not.
story. It showed a, at least to me, a woman who knew her worth
Period.
and knew when people were playing in her face.
Yep. And walked in that and understood her power.
Yes.
She understood her
She
power and
owned
she
a
was
night on television.
and you couldn't give her a $400 ticket.
To Disney.
That is crazy to me.
To Disney.
That is crazy to me. One ticket.
Yeah. Shonda, don't you have enough? Oh, okay.
And how many hits has she had on Netflix since?
A lot.
Listen, playing in her face.
Playing in her face. Yeah. I'm glad she got to talk about it in her own words.
Me too.
So we had to pivot back over to Oprah, and Oprah talking about that episode of her show where she had on skinheads and understanding then the importance of intentionality, right? And only using her platform as a source of good moving forward. And we get into the power of the audience, social media rising, Twitter rising, and how much audience engagement started to have an impact on television, right? The Game getting renewed at BET and its opening being 7.7 million viewers. Okay. Issa and Quinta blowing up off of social media. You talk all the time about Twitter and Scandal and the impact that audience had on the success of that show. So when we look at the rise of social media, again, there can be a lot of negatives people point to, but there's positives too on some of these industries, right? Because then Black people had more to take back to a network and say, see, even though you say my ratings are this and that, look at this audience engagement. You know, look at the demand to bring this content to your audience specifically. And I thought that was a great point to highlight.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is where ownership comes into play again, because you can still be all those things and they can still decide to cancel you if they feel
For
like
sure.
it.
For
Because
sure.
I mean, that's what we've seen recently with you know, obviously switching gears on genre, but Joy Reid show. Like, she was a success in her spot, but because you know, corporate appeasement, uh she no longer has her show
Mm-hmm.
on cable network. And it just, it's so mind-blowing because it's like the constant moving of the goalpost. You know what I mean? Like, you
What
said
is
these are
success?
these metrics matter and you deliver, but then what, right? Like, are
Yeah.
they gonna say, okay, Shonda Rhimes, she said, I have made this network billions of dollars. You would think that would be the ultimate metric,
Yep.
but haven't we given you enough? That cocky son of a
Yeah. He would be the one that, like the lady who took over and fired her ex-boss, who was the CEO, who told her that she was going to become the CEO.
yes.
That would be that person you would
Yep.
call immediately.
Yep.
They go ahead and pack your bags. Get the fuck on out of here.
It's a wrap. You said what to
Yeah.
who?
Yeah. You
Oh,
get the fuck on out of here. Um, to your point, we can kind of wrap this up with some of that about ownership, right? Because again, we talk about the influence of social media. We get into a bit about the fact that Black people need to be just as adamant to be behind the scenes as in front of the scenes, because that's where behind the scenes is where the power is. To be honest, that's why I always really wanted to produce and live in that world, because I'm like, I want to be able to control the narrative and not just be the puppet in front. But there obviously is power in being talent too, and that's where a lot
yeah.
of the money is. But and you have a lot of power being in front of the screen, but you have to cultivate the Black talent behind the screen as well. So
Yeah.
Sarita Singleton was mentioned and interviewed for her work
Yes.
with Issa, Rap Shit, all of that. You have Lena Waithe, who continues to be highlighted, being the first Black woman to win an Emmy for writing in a comedy series. Again, that
Yeah.
connection from Debbie to Mara to Lena. We get discussion on LGBTQIA
Yes.
representation, the
Yes.
Shy, Pose. Core Jefferson makes his appearance in this as well, talking about issues of race and how he left journalism because
American fiction.
he did not like the way that he had to kind of portray it and talk about it versus in his career now and with writing for TV and film, he's able to do what he wants to do. Generational trauma, childhood trauma are discussed. And I think what is valuable, like as kind of some takeaways from this as we wrap up the docuseries, is the idea of Black people supporting other Black people, paying it forward again with the lineage. Because even Ava talks about how Shonda gave her her first TV directing opportunity. You know, she was already a successful film
Yes.
director, but the
Yes.
network still was like, well, she doesn't know nothing about TV, right? So it took Shonda giving her that opportunity, Ava then giving that opportunity to other Black women with Queen Sugar.
It's so important. It's such a
Yeah,
ripple effect. I wrote in my notes, it's like the connective tissue is crazy of like
exactly.
these extremely successful Black women in Hollywood.
Yep. And so you kind of wrap up with Byron Allen, Oprah, Tyler, Issa, everybody talking about ownership and to bet on yourself, right? And that is really going to be the key to success. So you talked about last week, Delora, the fact that we own this podcast. We intend to continue to
Yes.
own this podcast, right? And I
Yes.
think when it comes to the messages that are being put out there, we just need to take a more direct path towards that versus waiting for someone else to give us the keys or
Right.
to give us a stamp of approval. And we have so many mechanisms now to be able to create content on our own in ways we never have before, thanks to technology. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope that people continue to lean into that, but also that the Black talent who's already been cultivated and has that bag right now just continues to pour into the community as a result.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking about that as well. Like, I know we're still climbing our mountain, but like, what can we do to serve the community as well? Like, to help foster. Because when people ask, I do help. I'm like, okay, we can if you do this, I do also tell them, I'm like, it's a lot of work, y'all. It's a lot of work. You ready?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I
But the
don't
beauty
think
about a
anyone
podcast is
ever
you can
denies
do,
that is you got to work hard. That was one of the
yeah,
messages from the discussion that Hannah Beekler had at the Yellow Springs Film Festival last
yes,
weekend was if there's nothing else, she's done. She's worked very, very, very hard.
yeah,
What are your final
yeah.
thoughts for Seen and Heard, the history of Black television?
Um, my final thoughts. I did appreciate the journey she took us. Highlighting shows from, you know, 60s and the golden age of 90s until today. It made me realize again that whole conversation that, the past isn't as far as they've tried to convince us that it is. That we had the privilege to live through that golden age of Black people on TV. I mean, again, calling back to number one on the call sheet, the fact that Love Jones was the first real like romantic movie for Black folks. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean that was like the first of its kind, you know?
Yeah.
And again, to I like I said in the beginning, and I wrote this in my notes, I'm like, did we all have the same childhood 80s babies? Like when it came to watching these shows, and just they were so aspirational. Like it was so important that they did what they did at that time because um you know Alexandria, who played Max on Living Single, talked about how many lawyers walk up to her and say, I wanted to be a lawyer
You
because of
talking about
you.
Erica Alexander? Mm-hmm.
Eric, yeah, thank you, Eric Alexander. um Even the fact that Issa pointed out that Sinclair was like one of the first awkward Black girls on TV,
Kim
that
Whitfield has said the
tickled
same thing.
tickled me. um and then that in contrast to Keeping Your Head Above Water, Good Times, and how the lead actors from Good Times were like, I was about to leave the show. One of them did leave the show because, um, obviously John Amos famously left the show, but Esther was like, oh, yeah, I was considered it too because I didn't like how we were being portrayed. And
Exactly.
again, to see her, I love when seeing, older Black actors talk in interviews because they're such thespians. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like to me, they bucked all the imagery that they were trying to put on Black people. It's like they were, I don't want to say articulate because I hate when people say that about Black people, but you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
just had this air about them and
Mm-hmm.
sophistication and enunciation of things that I admire.
Yep.
But but yeah, I appreciated this journey. I appreciated the areas they highlighted, especially on ownership and the you know the whole conversation of we're not a monolith by showing our LGBTIA brothers and sisters and how important everybody voice is. And I do agree with what Lena Waithe says. She's like, freedom isn't like just having the same type of Black people on TV. Freedom is being able to show us in all, I'm elaborating now, all of our shapes
Right.
and colors.
For
So
sure. That's the beauty of the diaspora. I said Kim Whitfield, by the way, and I meant Kim Coles, but well said. My final thoughts are just I am so happy to see continued content like this that even though we may have lived through some of these eras, there's still so much to learn. There's still so much to
Yes.
absorb. There's still so much to
Yep.
understand. And again, that is projecting something for the next generation to continue to strive to do more and to own more and to have more in these spaces in terms of power. And, you know, I look forward to continued evolution with Black talent. So that's it. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with us and listening to this recap of Seen and Heard, the history of Black television on HBO Max. Be sure to check it out if you have not already. We love everything Black and rooting for everybody Black. Delora, let's move on to Hidden Gems. What you got for the week?
I don't have anything this week. I mean, have I been watching movies and TV and reading books? Yes. But nothing really came to the surface that I was like, yes, read, watch this. You know what I mean? So I got you next week. How about you, Ashley?
All right. I have one hidden gem. It's not so hidden because I believe it's the #1 series on Netflix still at the moment, but it is Wayward. It is a thriller. I made the mistake of watching this, binging it late on Saturday night and staying up till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the reason why I had to stay up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, because I was freaked out after I watched it. I was like, okay, I'm going to need like something in between of this before I go to sleep, just because I'm someone who has very vivid dreams. So if I go to sleep on something that I don't want to stick in my subconscious, I need like a palate cleanser. But it was a very interesting show. It's about a cult. Case surprise, surprise. Y'all know I love cult shit. Stars Toni Collette and a series of youngsters. And Mae Martin, who is actually the creator of the series, is also the star. And it's fascinating. It's 8 episodes. It dropped in September. I don't want to give too much away because I do think it's one that you should kind of go into a little bit cold so that you have a chance to really like dive into the story and settle in before it starts getting real weird. So I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. Share your thoughts because I would love to hear them. That is Wayward, 1 season on Netflix. That's it. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with us for another episode of the pod. We appreciate it. Share this with everybody you know. We're on all the things, all the socials, YouTube. Find us everywhere. We'll be back with more in headlines and hot topics. But in the meantime, as always, be blessed.
Bye.